Go Jackets.
What is going on, everyone, and welcome to WreckTalk. It has been quite the tumultuous merry-go-round of coaches in the past month, hadn't it? We talked on a live show with Bryce Kuhn. Go check Bryce Kuhn out at the Crowded booth. Does great stuff. About Sean Elliott leaving his team high and dry, like into their third spring practice, goes back home to South Carolina. Which I criticized at the time. You got to be careful anytime you criticize anyone. People have some kind of issue with it. It's funny how these coaches get all the leniency in the world to go take jobs wherever, leave their teams in abjectly horrible situations. Then a player looks out for his own self-interest, transfers to a spot that might be better for him, and he's the devil. Funny how it doesn't go both ways for a lot of people. Anyways. We didn't know the avalanche that was going to unleash, especially for all the schools in the northern part of the state. Sean Elliott leaves saying that it's weird his family had been living in Columbia, South Carolina for 7 years while he was the coach here in Atlanta of Georgia State. I don't quite know how you make that work. Not for me to judge. He says that's a big part of the reason. I personally don't believe him. It's weird. Why would you not have left at the end of the season? Why into the third spring practice are you leaving? Georgia State, in my opinion, makes an excellent hire in Dell McGee, Georgia running backs coach, excellent recruiter, younger guy, a guy that I really think can take Georgia State to levels they haven't been before. And it's going to be something in especially in the city of Atlanta, Georgia Tech is going to have to look out for. We're going to be recruiting the same players. And in my opinion, he's going to have an easier path to recruiting them. So, what happens next? Georgia, to replace Dell McGee, hires Georgia Tech's wide receivers coach, Josh Crawford. Now, Josh Crawford's done an excellent job at Tech, part of this, kind of meteoric rise of offense in Tech, in relation to what they had been previously to Buster Faulkner, who was also hired from Georgia last year. Maybe that started the avalanche. And a lot of people are scratching their heads saying, well, I don't think Josh Crawford has ever coached running backs. Why would Georgia hire him to coach running backs? And Bryce Kuhn made this point. I absolutely agree. Recruiting. He's an excellent recruiter. And I think that should tell you something about the staff, at least offensively, that Key has built and their specialty in recruiting the state. Josh Crawford was hired 100% because he's a great recruiter. He has deep-rooted Georgia recruiting ties, and I think that tells you especially as well as Georgia recruits, and I know we don't like to give a lot of credit to Georgia on this channel. Brent Key's onto something, right? Brent Key's onto something with kind of doing some unique things. That's Bryce's phrasing of it. I mean, to me, almost a Moneyball type approach to working around the things we have to do at Tech as it pertains to recruiting. And for all the people that always have a problem with that, I hope that gets your panties in a wad. I really do. It's a fact. So, Josh Crawford goes to UGA. Then, Kevin Scherer, who had just been fired at Georgia Tech, is hired as Georgia State's defensive coordinator, which is a good hire for them, I think. Kevin Scherer's been DC at SEC schools like Tennessee, ton of experience. But it kind of throws cold water on this idea that Kevin Scherer was just kind of done with coaching. His better years were behind him, which that could be the case. Kind of unfortunate for him. He was thrust into a DC role at Tech midseason in a situation I don't think a lot of coaches could have made work anyways. But that is now we've had a coach go from Tech to Georgia, Georgia State or Georgia to Georgia State, and now Tech to Georgia. So we've got this trinity in the northern part of the state. Then Georgia State also hires Carter Blount. He was a special teams analyst for Tech. I don't know much about him. I mean, a lot of people that are analysts that, kind of had not done much at other places. I think he's been hired as their special teams coach or special teams coordinator. Then Tech goes and gets one out of Georgia, Josh Collins, to replace what I can only assume to be Kenyatta Watson. Young kid, he was in the player personnel arena, so I'm sure a lot to do with recruiting. I think he played at Georgia. I don't know. I've never heard his name, so I don't think he hit the field that much. So now we've replaced Kenyatta Watson. Then Tech goes and hires Georgia State's offensive coordinator, Trent McKnight, which I also think is a great hire for Tech at this portion of the cycle. Trent McKnight, a guy with a good bit of experience for his age. I've got notes on him here. Where are my great notes? He was the OC at Georgia State for the last 2 years, 2022 seasons, 2023 season. And he was their wide receivers coach from 2017 to 2021. And as much as I hate to admit it, a lot of times at Tech, when we're replacing coaches, we're having to promote them. In other words, give them a position that's higher than what they previously held. It's nice to see at Tech us hiring someone who is stepping down in a role, meaning maybe they're a little bit overexperienced for the role. So we're hiring someone who was an OC. Now he's going to become our wide receivers coach, has a ton of experience in that. And I just looked up the numbers. 2023, Georgia State last year was 66 in scoring offense, which is really the only metric I care about. If you're racking up 500-600 yards a game, but you're not scoring that many points, doesn't really matter how many yards you racked up. I accidentally paused the recording. We're back at it. But there's 66 overall scoring offense in 2023. Their two leading receivers, both under 1,000 yards, but respectable. 877 yards for Robert Lewis, 7 touchdowns, and 650 yards, 6 touchdowns for, I can't read the first name I wrote, but his last name is Williams. And Robert Lewis having 877 yards is kind of impressive to me because he backed up Jamari Thrash. Now, Jamari Thrash is a guy that went to Louisville last year. He's an absolute stud, and I had no idea. All I did when I was trashing Louisville last year was I looked at where he went to school, and I'm like, he can't be all that good. Nah, he's a baller. He showed that out. This year, in fact, in 2022, he had 1,122 yards, 7 touchdowns. There's a reason they wanted him at Louisville, right? Now, previous to being at Georgia State, coaching wide receivers, becoming their OC, he spent 5 years at his alma mater, Samford, where he coached pretty much everything on offense, but his specialty being wide receivers. He's from Birmingham. So all in all, I think it's a pretty good hire for Tech, again, being this late in the cycle, and he's going to have some weapons to work with. Look, we should have Leo Blackburn coming back. I keep shouting it from the rooftops. Know this kid's name. If he's able to get involved, stay healthy this year, he's a phenom NFL talent at wide receiver. 6'5", reminds me of Kyle Pitts. Really wide receiver, tight end hybrid. Obviously, you got the freshman All-American coming back in Eric Singleton Jr. You got Christian Leary coming back. You got Chase Lane coming back. All good stuff. So, just to recap, going even back to last year, Buster Faulkner's hired by Georgia Tech from Georgia. That turned out, at least with one season's evidence to look at, a home run hire for Georgia Tech. He's already interviewing for OC jobs, SEC. I think there's only one OC job he would take. I think he's looking he'll take a head coach. He might take the OC at Georgia if that was ever offered to him. That would break my heart, but it is what it is. Then we get into this year. Georgia Tech has just a snafu on the defense. In fact, Georgia Tech wipes their entire defensive staff. Kenyatta Watson leaves, goes to Auburn. Sean Elliott leaves, goes to South Carolina. Make of that what you will. Dell McGee hired from Georgia to Georgia State. Josh Crawford hired from Georgia Tech to Georgia. Carter Blount, special teams analyst, hired from Georgia Tech to Georgia State. Josh Collins, recruiting specialist, we'll call him, hired from Georgia to Georgia Tech. And then Trent McKnight, Georgia State's OC, goes to Georgia Tech. I got through all that. So let me know what you guys think. I'm not going to do some huge breakdown. A lot of these guys are more minor roles, so there's not a ton of stuff on them. Let me know what you guys think of this hire. I don't think I can remember, though, this kind of merry-go-round of coaches in the state, even between two schools, let alone three. I'll be looking out for your comments. Y'all have a good one. Have a good day. Did I say that awkwardly enough? Can you tell I don't really have anything else to say? That's what I thought. We're not even editing this out. People need to know what I'm like.